There are two things you need to know about automation in the enterprise. So first off is automation is becoming a strategic part of every new business initiative. Second is automating conversations brings cost savings and efficiency to business users while bringing immediacy and relevance to your end users. Anywhere conversations can be automated, they will be. As conversational AI technology improves, we'll see the scope of conversations expand and the sophistication of these conversations increase. If you're new to the market or you're new to conversational AI, it's good to see what's in the market now. We see all of the offerings for the major players mapping out across these two dimensions, platforms versus point solutions and software versus services. If you look at Amazon and Google, they're focusing a lot on the core technologies. Amazon wants to drive its media and commerce ecosystem. Google wants to own data, drive the Android experience, and drive commerce as well. And of course, all of these vendors are cloud vendors, so they want to be able to drive cloud consumption long-term through both their conversational services and through general AI services. But the challenge with these vendors is that they tend to either focus on code-first platforms, which require developers to get anything done, or really simplistic tooling that's based on trying to support games or basic FAQs or search. But what businesses need is domain experience to understand what they're doing and also an understanding of their users. They also need a solution that's going to meet them where they're at in their conversational maturity. And that's why we see a lot of point solutions on the market. And those are solving either for specific use cases or bring some industry knowledge. Then you also see BPOs. They might have conversational offerings that kind of bring incremental efficiency to their human workforce, but it's not a core part of what they do. And lastly, you see professional services platforms, in quotes. These are really solution blueprints or frameworks that are really designed to enable a professional services business. But a key question here is, with all of these offerings out on the market, which one do people go with? Well, all of them. What we see on the market is that there's a lot of individual projects that people are trying on in the enterprise. A lot of them start off as maybe experiments. They might grow, and ultimately you might end up with something like this, where HR is using one platform, your website may be using another platform. There might be an Alexa skill or a Google Home skill scattered throughout the enterprise. What this results in is what we call conversational sprawl, where an enterprise is saddled with unplanned growth without any kind of overarching strategy of how they want to deploy a platform within their business. This leads to inconsistent standards with no reusability of the different work that you've done across different projects and no consistency around security, scalability, or administration. So here's how I see it. If you stack up all of the offerings out in the market against standard enterprise requirements, let's take a look. We have big SaaS of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. While they score high in terms of cloud compliance, they have offered just basic tooling around security controls for their conversational tooling. They are SaaS-only deployments, so that means all of your customer interactions are going through their tools. They have limited audit history, and they might be competition, especially if you're a commerce customer who doesn't want to invest in AWS. Then you see SaaS and point solutions, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. They're simpler offerings. They don't focus on enterprise compliance because they're really focused on solving a specific problem in a specific industry. They might do that quite well, but they're really not looking at how does their application sit in the enterprise. Then you have what I call services platforms that are kind of professional services design, kind of wrapped in a platform language. They could be anything. A lot of times this is really driven by what are past client engagements, what have we been forced to build, rather than having a really first-party investment in building a platform. That's why we believe that a true software platform can mitigate these risks. We let you sign on, for example, through your single sign-on system. Apply access rights at the individual feature level of your application. Support GDPR and privacy compliance, and have full auditing and version history to make sure you know who's been touching your application and what they've been doing. We support integrations, and not just supporting the ability to integrate, but really having a platform that from the ground up conceives of the idea that integrations are going to be part of what you do. And then you need deployment options that are going to meet your needs. For a lot of folks, this could mean they need an on-prem option to be able to support their privacy requirements or their data management requirements. And finally, you need productivity tools that work across the spectrum. Developers need to be productive, the basic business user needs to be productive, and everything in between. So those are risks that come out of any traditional introduction of new platform, but what are the new risks that we see? Well, if you're here, you know that conversational interfaces open the door for you to collect personal information about your visitors, whether you want to or not. That means people might divulge passwords, personal information, financial history, medical history, all sorts of data that you don't want to collect, you don't want to store, you don't want to manage. And in a sense, this has been with us ever since web forms. We've always been collecting data from users, but the difference is instead of the guided inputs and the validation that we have with web forms, you can say anything in conversation and that's coming into your organization. And you might say, well, we're doing this right in one department, but marketing might be doing it right, but maybe HR isn't, or maybe your internal business process management has a completely different standard. And that's why we really think it's important to think from a platform perspective. What data are we collecting? Where is it stored? Is it on SaaS? Is it on-prem? Is it through managed hosting? Who owns this? And these are key questions that you need to be able to consider when thinking about a platform. A platform that you select needs to be built from the ground up to really celebrate the investments that you've made in your existing systems and not become a new silo for content or a new silo for search. You need to be able to integrate with things like CRM, your content management systems, your marketing platforms, and your IVR. We say the smarter that, or the more governable your platform is, the smarter it can be by integrating with all of your systems. Another aspect of governance is compliance with your internal security requirements. How do people access the system? What can they do within the system? And are you supporting versioning and audit history? And do you also support GDPR and privacy compliance? From a deployment perspective, you need to be thinking about how does this live in the organization? How many projects do you have that may be on unauthorized SaaS vendors, or maybe they should be on-prem, but they're not yet, and you don't know where your data is going. So you need to be able to have a variety of different deployment options to support you. So from an IT perspective, conversational platform mitigates all of this risk by allowing IT to establish standards, enforce them, but also free other departments up to build their own solutions based on this tooling. From a conversational development perspective, platforms provide a variety of user interfaces, from the simple to the complex, to really enable users across the enterprise. Again, the key here is to not have to call a developer every time you want to make a change, on the one hand, but also to empower developers to improve the system, to make it easier for business users and power users. So as a whole, a platform lets you govern, lets you gain efficiencies from having a common set of tooling that you're using. It allows you to project your budget for your software licensing or your software operation over time, and it empowers users across the organization. So I'll leave you with 4 things to look at when you're looking at a conversational platform. First off, look for something that's going to support your data security and privacy needs first and foremost. Second, make sure your platform is built from the ground up to support integration. And that doesn't mean you're going to have to call a developer every time you need to integrate. It means your developers are creating reusable components that have a home in the application. Next, make sure that your platform meets your deployment requirements, whether that's on-prem, managed hosting, or in your own cloud. And finally, make sure that the application supports you as an organization, that empowers users from the simplest business user to the most complex developer. And as a last thing I'll leave you with, if you have an iPhone or the LinkedIn app, go ahead and scan my QR code, connect with me on LinkedIn, Cognigy also has a table out in the hall, and we would love to talk to you about enterprise platforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much.